5.7, using congruent triangles. Essential question, how can you use congruent triangles to make an indirect measurement? When we can get triangles congruent, the other corresponding parts are also congruent. Let's see how this is going to help us in this proof. We have a picture here where some of the information is given, so I'm going to go ahead and start writing it down. I can see that AB is congruent to BC and that AD is congruent to DC, and that comes from the given. Now I also see that with this reflexive side I can get BD congruent to BD, and that comes from reflexive. So with not too much work, I've eliminated all of these methods, and I've come down and I've been able to prove the triangle's congruent by SSS. Now I'm going to write out the triangle congruence. I'm going to start with ABD, and then I have to be very careful how I put these letters. Angle A is between the 2 and the 1 tick mark, so it goes with angle C, which is between the 2 and the 1 tick mark, which is C. And then I see AB, and it has to go with BC. Well, since C is already here, I'm going to have to put B in that second spot, and the only other letter to work with is D. And remember, our plan is SSS. Now let's take a look at what we were trying to prove. We weren't trying to prove the triangle's congruent, but what's nice now is that since the triangles are congruent, we can now say angle A is congruent to angle C because it's the other congruent parts. So once the triangles have proved congruent, we have other parts that are congruent. And the way we write this is we say corresponding parts, that refers to the angle A and angle C, of congruent triangles. That comes from right over here, these congruent triangles that I got. And we say are congruent. So these are the corresponding parts. So we're talking about these. These corresponding parts, angle A and angle C, are from congruent triangles, which is up here, so therefore they must be congruent. And so it's like doing what we've been doing before, but going one extra step. All right, let's go ahead and take a look at this problem. And we can see we have two pairs of sides. So two pairs of sides means we're probably not going to use this method or this method. We're not working with right triangles, so we're not going to use this method. I don't see another pair of sides, so I don't think we're going to use this method, but I do see some vertical angles. So it looks like this will be my plan. So step one is to write down what I see given, QP congruent to PT and RP congruent to PS, and that's the given. Step two, we get some vertical angles, and I'm going to label that angle 1 and angle 2. So I'm going to say angle 1's congruent to angle 2. Vertical angles are congruent. And now I have my SAS, and I'm going to be very careful with my letter order. Q, R, P. It doesn't matter how you start, it's how you finish. Now remember, the P's have to go together, so P will be at the end. And I have this QP, and it has to go with PT. Well, P's already here, so I'll have to put a T here, and the only other letter to work with is S. And that's going to be my plan, SAS. Now, since the triangles are congruent, the other parts that I didn't use in the proof are now going to be congruent. So step 4 is angle Q will be congruent to angle T, and we're going to write corresponding parts of congruent triangles are congruent. These are the parts. They come from these triangles, and they are congruent. See how that ends like that. All right, let's go ahead and try another problem. Now, I see a pair of sides here, and I see a reflexive right here. So I see a hypotenuse pair and I see a leg pair. So I'm going to try for this one right here, HL. Now remember, HL is for right triangles. So be very careful and make sure you show right triangles. Okay, so step one, I'm going to write that segment JK is congruent to segment KL, and that's going to be my H pair given. And I'm also, it looks like I'm given that KM is perpendicular to JL because I see this little right angle. And I'm going to call this angle 1 and angle 2. So I know now that angle 1 and angle 2 are right angles, and that comes from definition of perpendicular. Perpendiculars gave me the idea that both of these must be right angles. Now remember, I don't have to show that the right angles are congruent, but I do have to show that these triangles are right triangles. So triangle KJM and triangle LKM are right triangles, and that comes from the definition of right triangle. As long as you see a right angle, you must have a right triangle. So I have my H pair right here. Here's my H, and I have my right triangles right here. So I have my H pair and my right triangles. And so the last step to get all of this in is my leg, and my leg comes from KM congruent to KM, and that's reflexive. So now step 5, I can say triangle KJM is congruent. Remember, this angle and this angle, let's see, I should say the two M's have to go together. So this is M, and JK right here has to go with KL, but I got to be really careful and make sure KM's go together. So KM, KM, and then there's just one letter left here, and that's the L. 5, and that's going to be HL. And here's my L pair. Okay, 3 things have to be proved with HL. An H, right triangles, and an L. Okay, now the triangles are congruent, so now we can get these extra parts that we didn't know about to be congruent. So 6 will be JM is congruent to LM, and we're going to say corresponding parts of congruent triangles are congruent. All right, let's take a look at another one. The picture's a little complicated, so to help you out, I actually took JHN and I separated it from GKL, but I'll go ahead and put the marks. I'll put the 2 tick marks here, and over here I'll put the 2 tick marks here, and then KL and JN and angle N and angle L. When I separate the triangles, then I can see the answer. The plan is right here. Here's the plan. So it was not the proof that was hard, but what was hard was the picture. So I'm going to start off with my sides, JN congruent to KL, and then angle N congruent to angle L. Now I can't call that angle G, so I think what I'm going to do is call it angle 1 and 2. So angle 1's congruent, and this is angle 1, and this is angle 2, congruent to angle 2, and this is all given. We didn't have to work too hard. So step 2 is to actually tell the triangles are congruent, so I'm going to use these 3 letters, J, H, N, congruent to triangle. Now remember the H goes with a G, so the G's in the middle, and N goes with L, so L's going to go right here. There's only one letter left, and that's K, and that's going to be my plan, angle, angle, side. Now once the triangles are congruent, GK, see GK is part of this, and HJ is part of this, so we say GK is congruent to HJ, and we're going to say corresponding parts of congruent triangles are congruent.